Okay, this is Mick Moore from the Turtle Club, and I'm out here with Tony and Jeff. Jeff's from the Conservancy, and Tony's from Mote Marine, and we're out here with them to talk about sea turtles today. Both of them have sea turtle scientific study programs at their respective institutions. And Jeff, can you tell us a little bit about the program that you're doing at the Conservancy, what you're studying?
We have a couple programs at the Conservancy, one with the nesting beach, and this program, which is a little different in that we're catching turtles in the water. So we're dealing with non-nesting juvenile turtles that are inhabiting Pine Island Sound, coming here to eat crabs, the Kemp's Ridleys, and grow up into larger turtles and then nest in the western Gulf.
And so you're studying Kemp's Ridley turtles. How are those different than loggerheads that people hear about often in Florida?
The Kemp's Ridley is a smaller turtle. They only get to be about 100 pounds. They're also the most endangered of the sea turtle species, but interestingly enough, they happen to be one of the most common in our waters here in Southwest Florida. So our project is unique in that we're targeting Kemp's Ridley turtles in the water rather than the nesting beach studies of most other projects.
And Tony, you're from Mote Marine, and how are Mote and the Conservancy involved together in this? How does that work?
Our project began back in 2003 as Mote was doing an entire study of the entire Charlotte Harbor estuary system. And so we had different scientists doing different things, but the sea turtle component was one where we could benefit from people such as Jeff, who had a lot of experience with Ridleys elsewhere along our coast. So we teamed up. It was a team approach. And so our respective institutions have continued that study long after the Charlotte Harbor project has kind of been wound down. And because there's a lot more that we are learning by continuing this partnership approach. We've gone from characterizing what's here to trophic studies, that is food web studies, and now we're moving into a new phase of a really exciting phase is tracking the turtles to do spatial ecology and learn where they move in response to seasons and threats to our coast like red tide. So that's where we are now, is where we are today out here, is to release a turtle that we're going to be satellite tracking.
So the turtle that we're going to be releasing today, what type of turtle is it?
This is a Kemp's Ridley turtle we caught yesterday afternoon. We held her overnight to queue her up for satellite attachment first thing this morning. And the size range here, she's about mid-range, so she's the middle of the curve, typical sized Kemp's Ridley that we would find in these waters. The common question is how old, and I'll preempt that. We don't really know an exact age, but through the tagging, the flipper tagging that we do, we recapture animals, look at their growth over time, and we can come up with growth estimates. And I think this turtle we're releasing today is about 6 years old, 4 to 6, maybe 5 is a good middle number.
And how old do they typically live to? Do we know?
No. That's one of the remaining riddles. They have recaptured nesting females, so that's an animal that's already grown to maturity, which is about 12 years. And I think they've recaptured one 16 years, over the course of 16 years. So there's a 28-year-old approximately animal. No telling how long they live. If they can survive the impacts that humans, the negative impacts from humans, maybe 50 or plus.
Tony, can you tell us a little bit about how the transmitter is attached and what happens to it after we release the turtle, and how you go about tracking it?
Okay. This is a smallish turtle, you call it medium, but 48, so about as long as my forearm. We'll show you it in just a moment. And because it's still an actively growing animal, we need to attach it in a different way that gives some room for it to grow, and with a stretchy base to it. So it has a neoprene base to give it a little bit of a stretch, and it's kind of dabbed on with glue on the middle of each scute, which is the keratin part of the shell. So as it grows, it spreads a little bit and gives a little bit, but the satellite transmitter stays attached firmly, so we get a longer tracking period. So once that turtle hits the water, the little satellite transmitter has a wet-dry sensor on it, and as long as it's underwater, it says wet, 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 wet. Let's stay off and keep the battery life. Save that, and then once it achieves the surface and takes a breath for a couple of seconds, the dry signal says it's time to send the signal to the satellite, and as often as the turtle breathes, which is more often in warm water than it is in cold water, then that satellite signal gets sent to us by email. So we can download that and put it on a website, and we would want to be sure that we give two good plugs. One is the Sea Turtle License Plate Program, which is helping us catch the turtles in the first place, but also seaturtle.org is where one would go to see the images of where the turtles are moving each day.
Let's talk for a minute about the actual tag that's on the turtle and the tracking. The tag looks, when you look at the turtle, it looks kind of big on the back of the turtle. Does the turtle have any problems because of the tag, and does it stay on there forever, or what happens to the tag once you release the turtle?
In terms of the size of the tag, it's well within the limits. Usually the standard is 5% the body weight of the animal, and the tag is about 200 grams. This animal is 6 kilograms, so well within that range. It may look big and bulky, but these aren't, they're not fast swimming animals like a tuna or something that's a fast swimmer. So it does create drag, but certainly not enough to slow the animal down or interfere with its day-to-day activities. So it's not cumbersome to the animal. They'll adapt to it eventually.
And does it stay on forever, or does it come off after a period of time?
It will release after a year or so.
After a year or so, okay. And going back to the turtle tracking program, what's the ultimate goal by being able to track these turtles and see exactly where they're moving and when they're moving?
Well, we've been doing in-water captures and tagging studies, and when you recapture an animal, you get a beginning point and an end point. You don't know what that animal has done in between. So we're trying to fill those gaps and look at other areas of the bay that the turtles may be using. We concentrate on one area where we know we can find them, but as we track more animals, we see that they're using other parts of the bay as well, and that could lead us to other parts of the study. And so we're looking at their movements and feeding areas within Pine Island Sound, the Charlotte Harbor estuary. But then there's also a seasonal component. In the winter, the water temperatures drop, the animals look for warm water, which is either offshore or to the south. So we're hoping to gain some information about where they go during the winter when they're not inhabiting our coastal.
Last week was an interesting example also because we had red tide in the last month, and one of the turtles that we were tracking at that time, Erin, was one who kept moving in and out of the passes, and every time she moved out, we didn't know whether it was the tide moving her out and she was just riding, going with the flow, so to speak, or going out into the red tide and retreating. So, it gives us a set of, a way of linking animal movements to what's happening in the oceanic environment.
Great. And how is the Sea Turtle Grant Program or the Sea Turtle Tracking Program paid for? Where do you receive your funds to do this type of research?
I'm going to use your hat as an example because the license plate, which is illustrated on your hat there, funds the Sea Turtle Grant Program, which is on my t-shirt over here. And the people who elect to drive the plate, which is the #2 plate in Florida, the money that's generated beyond the Department of Transportation funds about $800,000 a year to sea turtle research. Some of that goes to the state, and some of that goes to researchers like Jeff and myself, but research, conservation, and education are all parts of what are components that are funded each year. There's been over, I'm not going to know the exact number, but it's well over $2.5 million have been distributed to sea turtle research in this state since the program began 10 years ago.
Now, if one of our customers or one of our guests says, I'd like to get involved and I'd like to help support sea turtle research, what opportunities are there for them to do that?
deploy them?
Lots. there are a few. You can work at the organizational level. You know, we have Moat and Conservancy have programs where you can donate. You have to earmark that for a specific program. As Tony indicated, driving around with a sea turtle license plate, the money from that program, we submit competitive grants, and that's why we're able to do what we're doing now, is because we were awarded a grant to come out here and do the work. There's also an opportunity on the seaturtle.org webpage for donating or adopting a turtle. A portion of that goes to the webpage, a portion to us, and also the individual level. Contact us directly with your interests, and as the Turtle Club has done, sponsor attach that way.
Great. Okay, I've got one last question, and that is, the two of you have devoted a substantial part of your lives to studying sea turtles.
We figured it out. 58 years between us.
58 years. Why have you picked sea turtles as the focus of your scientific research? What is it about sea turtles that...
Life in the slow lane.
Well, take a look at our office. It's not a bad place to work. A bad day in the water is better than a good day back in the office.
I certainly agree.
There's a casual dress code that comes into play, and well, I think, you know, all kidding aside, it's just the pursuit of greater knowledge and providing information on, you know, these fascinating creatures that hadn't existed previously. So it's, if I may quote a famous turtle researcher, we're trying to solve the riddles of the Ridley. So that's Dr. Archie Carr coined that phrase, and something that we carry on in our program.
And all species of sea turtle are threatened or endangered. So, you know, to create something, contribute to the body of knowledge about what they do helps us to save turtles. So that's a particular conservation focus that our work entails.
Great. Well, thanks for your work, and thanks for letting us come out here with you and release a turtle.
Sounds great.